What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 23 of Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live. It is Jason Martinez. We're going to have Bill Meltzer join us in just a second, and we're going to see if Craig Button is going to join or not. I'll tell the story if he doesn't, of how we kind of thought he was coming on. We'll see if he comes on. Said he could do it, and I just haven't heard back from him in the last couple of days. But send him the link. We'll see if he joins, and obviously, I'd love to talk to Craig Button and love talking to Bill Meltzer as well. And Tone's takes today on Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live. Make sure you download the Parx Sportsbook app. There, you can navigate it, check it out, get comfortable, easy to navigate, easy to figure out how to use. And all you have to do is open up an account, deposit first bet, risk-free, up to $500. It's that simple. So easy. You can bet on over-unders on player performances, on goals, points, power play points, first to score, exact score, to score, the money line, parlays, props, same game parlays. It's all there and all simple and easy to use. So make sure you check it out. It's the Parx Sportsbook app. You just go to the Android app store or the iPhone app store, download it. Again, open an account, no promo required. Deposit. Your first bet will be risk-free up to $500. So it's very simple. It's easy as pie, and you don't have to be a savant on your phone to be able to use it. So make sure you check it out. It is the Parx Sportsbook app, and make sure you follow Parx on the social channels at Parx Sportsbook on Twitter. Follow them on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as well. There you'll get great content. You'll also get daily specials and tons more. We're pumping out a ton of content, which is awesome to see. Tons of podcasts, live streams. Also, you get guys like all through the football season, Rich Gannon, he was awesome. Eddie Alvarez, Natalie Eganoff, Sam Wilson. This show, Odgies with Harry, which we're actually going to have tomorrow because Harry is traveling. We had had to make some changes to the schedule for this week, and so we'll have Odgies podcast episode, I think 12 tomorrow. Yeah, episode 12 tomorrow with Harry Mason, myself. So still a lot to come this week, and a brand new episode here of Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live. A lot to get into, and one of the things to get into on this episode is going to be Morgan Frost, and we'll see if Craig Button joins or not. He may be ghosting me, but right now you read his work at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com. One of the guys that I probably talk to more than my own wife, it is Bill Meltzer on Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live. What's going on, Bill?
Yeah, I'll be talking to my own wife at some point later today. But no, everything's going well. Another interesting day in Flyerland.
Yeah, it seems like there's a ton of debate right now, Bill, around Morgan Frost and usage because we see some of the players like Konechny, Sanheim, some of the younger players, young-ish players, really kind of starting to excel, even though the team's not winning, but just excel in their play and the structure and everything under Mike Yeo. But that brings up Morgan Frost and usage. And boy, it's been a big hot debate for a couple of days now on social media.
It definitely has. Also Morgan was sent down over the NHL All-Star break along with Cam York. So a lot of discussion with Morgan dovetails in the Cam York too. But with Morgan, I think it's because he's his name has been out there for so long, right? And he put up such huge junior numbers and was an AHL All-Star as a rookie, and he scored goals in his first 2 NHL games. And there's a hope. I shared that hope that he would make a relatively quick impact, make the adjustments he's had to make. I think that, as you said, the debates come down to a couple of things. Will he make those adjustments and be able to be a productive player, the NHL level? And is he being put in the best position to succeed? Truthfully, and it's something you and I have discussed privately, and we've discussed a couple of times on Flyers Daily. I would personally like to see him used a little bit differently than he has been. If you look at the Flyers, most recent game against the Blues, he was put in the first power play unit. And after the game, who did Mike Yeo single out for playing particularly well in the power play? It was Frost. Yeah. And he said that he was in a 1-on-3 situation, and he actually didn't panic, and he created scoring chance out of that.
Yeah.
He'd been off the power play essentially for 2 games entirely. Before that, for pretty much the entire duration of Mike Yeo's tenure, and the power play, both units has really struggled all year. I mean, other than the first 6 games of the season. So it's not like anybody's been lighting it up on the power play.
Yeah.
But and that includes Frost. I mean, Frost has had a lot of failed entries and things too, where he looked like everybody else looked. But if you go to the 2 games where he was essentially off the power play, he did have 1 PP2 shift. The previous game, and that was when Jerry Mayhew scored a power play goal. Well, who started the puck rotation? That was, he didn't get an assist off of it. It was like bing, 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 and in the net. It was Frost to Ratcliffe, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else had a touch in between too. It was Frost to Ratcliffe.
Let's bring in Craig Button right now, because he's a guy from TSN. He's the director of scouting for TSN. He is a great guy, and this is actually his 2nd appearance on Stick to Hockey. Joined us years ago, and there he is. Look at, oh man, all casual. I love it, man. You look great.
Thanks. I just I've been going through some implant surgery. It's a long process when you get an implant. So I had an appointment today. They're just getting ready to put in the artificial tooth. So I'm feeling good. They asked me if I needed painkillers. I said, no, I'll probably just have a little bit of discomfort. I'm not so worried. I don't know if Flyers fans can say that they don't need painkillers after watching this Flyers team this year.
Yeah, we're all going to end up in rehab, Craig.
Well, I don't want that to happen. Maybe just a simple aspirin might help you get through the pain.
Yeah, it's Jason Martinez, Bill Meltzer, and from TSN, Director of Scouting, and great guy, Craig Button. Craig, first question I want to ask you is, were you, as a guy that worked with Clarkie, were you surprised at his Cam and Strick appearance and some of the things he had to say regarding Nolan Patrick and some other Flyers prospects and draft picks along the way?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, and I'll tell you why. So, when you think about the Philadelphia Flyers, I mean, there's one person that comes to mind that, is the face of the Philadelphia Flyers and will forever be the face of the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's Bobby Clarke, Robert Earl. And so what does Bob Clarke care about more than anything on the planet? He cares about the Philadelphia Flyers, right? And he wears those emotions on his sleeves. And, Ron Hextall is a Flyer, and we know how much he battled for the Flyers and everything. But if you're not with the Flyers, Bob Clarke doesn't care. He doesn't care. And, was it accurate? Was it not accurate? We can all debate it. But I think what Bob was doing, there's a lot of questions that go back, and why didn't you draft McCarr? Why did you draft Nolan Patrick and everything? And so I think Bob was just defending the scouts and defending the scouting staff. What's the most perfect eyesight you have? It's hindsight, right? And so we all know what we should have done. Everybody knows what we should have done. We should have invested in this or bought that. Like, we know. Same thing with the draft. And I really believe that Bob was just defending the scouting process. And we can argue whether it was accurate or whether it was fair to Ron Hextall. Ron hasn't responded, and he's just kept mum on the word. But let's just go back and look at Nolan Patrick. Was a really, really talented player coming into the draft. I always go back and say, if there was debate about who I'm trying to find all the articles that said you shouldn't have drafted Nolan Patrick. Let's just go find them. Let's go find them for. Like, I was part of it. I knew Cale Makar. I knew how good Cale Makar was. I thought Nolan was a terrific prospect. So I'm not going to sit here. I can be right after the fact. When you go back and you look at it, Nolan, Nico Hischier, you got Hexton, you got Makar, you got Pettersson, right? Every draft is going to be. I mean, didn't the Flyers get Claude Giroud somewhere in the 20s?
22.
They couldn't even remember his name when Bob got up to the podium, right? So, I mean, one of the funny moments, right? So, I mean, I'll accept anything that says if there was a debate about Nolan Patrick at 2 at that time, and keep this in mind, guys, Bill and Jason, the Flyers won the lottery that year. They moved from 12 to 2. I can guarantee you that when you're drafted in the 12 range, you're not really focused in on the top end of the draft, right? You're not. And the fact of the matter is, all of a sudden you're sprung up there. You're going, okay, what are we thinking? I think the Flyers scouts are very thorough. I think Ron Hextall is very thorough. But as it relates to Bob Clark, make no mistake about it. If you're on his team, he's going to defend you to the end. If you're not on his team, he don't care.
Craig, we were just actually, before you jumped on, we were just talking about another player the Flyers drafted in 2017. We were talking about the development cycle in Morgan Frost. And Morgan put up huge numbers in the Ontario League, did well in the World Juniors, made the AHL All-Star game as a rookie, and is largely, other than 2 goals in his first 2 NHL games, largely struggled to produce at the NHL level. So I'm curious, do you think where he's at in terms of his adjustments to put himself in the position to succeed at the NHL level, and if you think things will click for him at some point?
Yeah, so I want to preface that with a commentary about Ron Hextall. So Ron Hextall, in those draft meetings, they were going through the draft and they were talking about all these players. And Ron, this is Ron telling me, like, I'll paraphrase. He said, in our meetings, everybody agreed on Morgan Frost. Everybody liked him. Everybody thought that he had really good NHL potential. And he said, I said, why don't we trade up and get him? He said, usually there's disagreement and a little bit of debate, even some friction on different players as you talk, because I never heard that, where every single person in the scouting group liked them. And Ron traded to get a first-round draft pick to draft Morgan Frost. So, there's part of the process that a lot of people may not know, right? That's Ron Hextall listening, right? So I have a hard time thinking that Ron Hextall wasn't listening to his scouts about Cale Makar if that was the case. Anyway, I'll just leave that one alone. But here's what I will say. I think that Morgan Frost might be in a very similar spot as the just recently hired Daniel Briere. Danny Briere was on waivers. He was drafted in the first round by the Arizona Coyotes, Phoenix Coyotes at the time. He went through waivers. Anybody could have had Danny Briere. He was a top scoring player. He was diminutive. He wasn't, and he needed to learn, and maybe he needed a new place to learn and sort of blossom and spread your wings. I think Morgan is very similar to Danny Briere. I'd be interested to hear Danny talk about Morgan, what he's seen, been around him, and try to relate it to his own experiences. But that's how I see Morgan Frost. It might not happen in Philadelphia, but I think there's a path for him to have success at the NHL level. And I think it might be similar to where Danny Briere found himself, who became a really good NHL player. Took him a couple of places. It took him a couple of stops to find it really that place. But when he did, there was no question that he was a good NHL player.
Yeah, and he was a great playoff performer too. And
Wasn't he?
Oh God, he just raised his game to another level. And the thing about Danny too, I remember talking to him about it. He just had to figure out how to give himself some space on the ice as a diminutive statured player. Let's talk about a guy that lived at Danny Briere's house, because his name is out there, and that would be Claude Giroud. Early in his career, he was bunking up at Danny with the kids and everything. And Claude's name's out there all over the place, Craig. You've heard the obvious ones like Colorado, and we've heard St. Louis, Minnesota, Florida, perhaps, and maybe Carolina, even the Rangers. When you look at the possible acquisition of Giroud at the deadline for a team, first of all, where do you see his game right now? How much can he add? And then also, where do you think is a good location for him to go, provided he would waive his no-move clause to go to that specific destination?
Okay, so what I would say to you, Jason, where wouldn't be a good place for Claude Giroud?
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of chuckle when I hear the report. Well, it wouldn't be a good fit. Trust me, Claude Giroud could fit in anywhere. I think you make a really good distinction. Where's his game at now where he can help? So you mentioned the Colorado Avalanche. You have McKinnon, you have Nazem Kadri. He settles in there as a third-line center, can play right wing, play under power play. That just makes it an already strong team that much stronger. And I feel that way about Claude in so many different places. Is he a front-line player like he once was? No, he's not that player anymore. But He's a competitor. He's still got lots of skill in his game. He's still got lots of game. But you put him in different situations and you surround him on a good team and you ask him to do what he can do right now. I look at teams, and so I look at it from this perspective. There's no question I think he could help any team looking to push their team along in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I look at a team like Minnesota, who's in Colorado's division, and they don't have a player like Claude, that type of ability offensively, and they can close that gap somewhat on the Colorado Avalanche. I mentioned this today to somebody, and then I'm not trying to start any types of rumors or anything. I'm just looking at it, and I'm looking at the Calgary Flames, and I'm just saying, you know what, phone Chuck Fletcher if I'm Brad Treliving, and I'd say, would you be interested in talking to me about Claude? And here's where I would go. I would ask him if he was interested in Sean Monahan. Sean Monahan has term left. You know what? Claude coming into the team, playing behind Lidholm and Backlund, the power play and everything. So I'm thinking about it, not to start rumors or to put players, but just thinking about, hey, where else could he fit in? Calgary's a really good team. Claude would make them that much better. And I think that you could make that argument. Why would Claude waive his no move to go someplace where he doesn't look at it and say, I got a legitimate chance to have success here? And I think he should do that. I think that, when you're in this position and you have so many suitors, pick your spot. Pick your spot. Yeah. But if I'm a team, if I'm Florida or anybody that's serious, Carolina, whoever, I'm making the calls to Chuck Fletcher because I want to find out, number one, what the price is, and number two, would Claude waive to come to my club?
One of the guys who, speaking of issues around the Flyers right now, there's been a lot of talk lately about particularly the recent play of Ivan Provorov. And, he plays a lot of minutes, 25, 27 minutes, sometimes even a couple times this year, close to 30 minutes during a game. They haven't had Ryan Ellis this season. There's a huge burden on the player, but there's also expectations that come with that. And, during a couple of the losing streaks, Ivan particularly recently has had some games or situations where he has not been the best defenseman on the ice, has not been one of the best players on the ice. So naturally what follows with that is when a team is in the situation the Flyers are in, it was always Ivan Provorov is untouchable, Provorov is untouchable. If it were your assessment, your decision to make, how untouchable would he be? And obviously you're not giving a player away, but how willing would you be to talk about possibilities?
Well, I think you always should be open-minded, Bill, about possibilities, and then you go through the process. You examine what it means. Okay, what could return for Ivan Provorov mean? What kind of hole does that leave in our lineup? What type of players do we have that could come in and provide us, real good, strong play on the blue line? So that would be I never close my mind to considering things, but one of the things that happens with players. And football, and certainly in hockey, you're also going to function depending on what's around you. And you talked about the burden, and no Ryan Ellis, and the Philadelphia Flyers haven't been a team that's functioned very well this year. So because they're lacking in so many different areas. And I'm going to go to a football example. Matthew Stafford was the first overall pick in the NFL draft. He was a really good quarterback with the Detroit Lions. He never had a chance to win. God himself couldn't go to Detroit and win there, right? And so he ends up getting traded in a big deal, for Jared Goff, who had gone to the Super Bowl with the Rams and lost and everything. And there's he's never won. Well, you put him in an environment where you ask him to be at his very best. You ask him to do what he does at his best. And all of a sudden now you're looking at Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl champion, right? Sure. And I think that I can only think of a handful of players in hockey, and even in history of hockey, that could carry a team, by themselves, that were those players. Bobby Clark was one of those guys. Sidney Crosby, McDavid, right? There's so very few of them, right? The vast majority, all the rest of the players, they need support. They need to be. It's not that they're not willing to do more, but when you ask them to do more and they don't have the support behind them, they get stretched. And like a rubber band, they lose a little bit of their elasticity, and then sometimes they break. But that rubber band isn't as strong as it was when you weren't stretching them out. I think that's what's happened with Provorov, as it has happened with other players. So I finish with this. You better be really careful. He's 25 years old. He's got qualities and elements that to me are really valuable. So it's nothing wrong with considering it, but you better look at this year's season, the team, and put it into context. And don't just dispatch a player because he might not have had a good season.
Yeah, he may be the guy that you surround to help. Some guys, yeah, I mean, we've talked so much, Craig, about roster building, and it's great to have talent in the NHL, but those pieces got to fit. They got to complement each other. You got to have guys in certain roles willing to do their job and go out every night and punch the ticket and do their job. When you look at this Flyers team, you know, there's some talent here. Travis Konechny, it has talent. Travis Sanheim's got talent. Provorov's got talent. You know, when they're healthy with Couturier and Hayes and all that, that's been a whole nother part of the equation is health. But do the pieces fit? What do they have to do to get this thing moving in the right direction? What's Chuck Fletcher's kind of job at hand here?
Well, I think that, Jason, when you talk about pieces, it is a puzzle. Roster building is a puzzle. And you need to have your outline. You need to have your cornerstone pieces, right? Then you build it through the middle, right? Like nobody starts building a puzzle trying to figure out what the middle piece is. You better get your outline and core pieces in. So when I look at the Flyers, I think they do have some really good pieces in place, good puzzle pieces and with respect to players. But you know, you look back to championship teams and you look back, you know, how good was Barclay Goodrow and how good was Yanni Gourde and how good was Blake Coleman? I mean, you look at what Julien Brisebois did. He went and traded first-round picks for Goodrow and for Coleman. And he traded a good prospect in Nolan Foote to get Coleman. But he knew he had skill, but he knew he needed other elements in his group. You know, everybody would like more skill. If you could just load it up with skill and just try to overwhelm people with skill, I like your chip. We have a salary cap and skill gets paid. Yep. So if you're not building out the other parts of your lineup, you're going to fall short because your skill can only do so much. And I think that for the Philadelphia Flyers and Chuck Fletcher and his group, it's about understanding where do we find those players? Where do we find those players that can come in and make us hard to play against, that make us challenging to play against? I talked about the Calgary Flames. I look at the Calgary Flames, and there's a lot of talking on, oh, they didn't do very much. They didn't do very much. They added Blake Coleman. They added Trevor Lewis. Daryl Sutter wasn't asking those guys to come in and be frontline players. He said, I need these players to come in and support Goodrow and support Lindholm and support Tkachuk. Tkachuk and Goodrow and all those guys, they play, but they were stretched thin. The blue line was stretched thin. You know, they have Zadorov and Goodbranson. They're a bottom pair group. They're a bottom pair duo. But what Daryl asked them to do, they're really capable, and it takes some of the pressure off. You know, you talk, Bill, about Provorov. So now he not only has to play against the other team's best players, he's got to play on the power play. He's got to play on the penalty kill, right? Well, Daryl split that up. So now a Noah Hannafin can thrive to a greater extent. The other players, you're not asking them to do everything. And, you know, you look at Gourde and Coleman and Goodrow. Yeah, they won 2 Stanley Cups. But to me, that's a great example of roster building and adding different elements and dimensions to your lineup. Totally I don't think the Flyers have that. I don't think the Flyers have multiple dimensions in their forward group and real significant elements to take some of the pressure off the blue line. You know, Carter Hart to me is a good goaltender. And I think that any time when you have Feasures in your defensive play as a group and certainly on the blue line, it's going to affect the goaltender in a negative way. Like, yeah, he's got to play better. And yeah, we look at it and go, should he be concerned? But I think if you improve some of the areas in front of him and around the team, the goaltending to me wouldn't be something that's going, geez, I got to get this. They're not the Edmonton Oilers who have a massive hole in the net.
Yeah. And Craig, you were talking about, you know, roster building and becoming a harder team to play against, you know, which led me to thinking of, you know, the Flyers brought in Rasmus Ristolainen at a very expensive cost. They cost him a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a roster player. Now he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. He's never played a playoff game yet in his career, and this won't be the year when he plays one. So there were some decisions to make, and I'm curious as to where you stand on that.
Trade him. There's got to be interest in him at the deadline. Trade him. I mean, I'm amazed. Honestly, I know the teams are up against the cap, so many teams, and we know what's happened because of the pandemic and its limited teams' ability to maneuver. So they're going to have to be creative. But when I see names like Colin Miller on the trade bait list in the top 10, and I don't see Rasmus Ristolainen, sorry. Like, you know what? Like, it's not like Colin Miller has this great record of 4 Stanley Cups and been around, right? Like, Luke Shed, I can understand because he's played, he's been a depth defenseman. But if I'm Chuck Fletcher, hey, I'm going to try. Are you going to get the same return on Rasmus Ristolainen that the Buffalo Sabres got? No, you're not. But if I'm a team around the NHL and I'm looking for somebody to come in and just give me a shot on the power play, right? Give me 15 minutes. I think you have to be realistic. If you're asking Rasmus Ristolainen to come in and be a frontline defenseman, you're going to be disappointed. He isn't that, right? And we know that the Flyers in the offseason look to reconfigure their group, especially on the blue line, and move some players in. And obviously Ryan Ellis out, Ristolainen, coming in. When I say Ellis out with an injury, so that's impacted them. But if I'm looking at these free agents and unrestricted, the roster has to change. And I don't see Ristolainen at his dollars being part of the future of the Philadelphia Flyers.
Craig, this is, I think, maybe the biggest question I'm going to ask you. You are such a seasoned guy. You've been an executive. You basically have been around this game, according to your Wikipedia, since birth. You were born into hockey. That's what the Wikipedia page says. But Bill and I have talked about this quite a bit. And Flyer fans, there's burn it to ash and rebuild it. And get the high draft picks for multiple years. We've seen teams do that. Hasn't really resulted in much for most of those teams. Stripping it all the way down is no guarantee that you're coming back up and you're going to be a perennial contender for some extended period of time. Or is it retool? Is it rebuild? What's the way that this team should handle it? Because I don't even know what you call it, but what does Craig Button do to put this team back on the map? And what kind of time frame is that kind of take to do it?
Well, I'm not a believe in the. I mean, there's lots of different theories. Burn it down. The scorched earth theory, right?
Yep.
The Buffalo Sabres haven't been in the playoffs for 11 straight years.
Yeah.
The Edmonton Oilers don't look any closer to success, and they've had 4 first overall picks. Okay, they don't look like they're any closer to success. The Tampa Bay Lightning won the Cup in 2004, lockout, came back, recognized maybe they weren't as good. They dipped, and then they were able to draft Stamkos and Hedman, and then away they went, right? So I don't think there's one answer to it. I'm not a scorched earth person. I don't think professional sports. When I finish here, I'm going to share a story with you about Bob Clark when I was with him in Minnesota, and that really helped me understand. Clear, not that I didn't believe it or anything, but he made me really understand it. So you have Konechny. Travis Konechny's 25, Provorov's 25, Sanheim's 26. They're young players. These aren't players. Carter Hart, he's 24. You when I talk about the puzzle and you look at the corner piece, I think they have corner pieces. I think they have pieces. Do they have all of them? No. Do they have to build out their roster as we've talked about? Yeah, they do. But I think that where you're at with the Philadelphia Flyers, and they have some good prospects. They do have some good prospects. So, you start to look at it in its entirety. I don't see them as a team that's got to just burn it down to the ground. And I don't believe that. I look at the Arizona Coyotes and I bring them up because people go, oh, look at what they're doing. Well, to me, they've never been committed one way or the other. The arena situation's been terrible. Their team, they chased it and everything. I think right now people are making a big fuss about them playing on the college campus at Arizona State and everything. But what they're trying to do, the new owner, who's committed to hockey in Arizona, he's trying to align the team with a building so that in 3 or 4 years' time, you find yourself in a place where you can have a chance at success. So that's a very different scenario.
Yeah.
Bob Clark, 1991. Our team in Minnesota, Bob Gainey was the coach. We were, I think, in our meetings at the end of January, we were 4 points out of last place. Lindros was the prize. Lindros was the prize. I'd like to tell you we didn't have the discussion about not trying to make sure we could get Lindros at first overall. We had it, and we were talking about it. Bob Clark said, I'll never be part of that. I'll never be part of that. Professional sports is not about trying to lose. He goes, it doesn't mean that you don't recognize what you have to do to become better and to win perennially. But the idea of trying to lose on purpose, he said, it'll never sit with me. And he goes, if you want to be in professional sports and you have an idea to lose on purpose, he goes, you're in the wrong business. Bob Clark is still a big influential voice in the Philadelphia Flyers organization. And that's why when I look, everybody talks about the original 6, right, in the NHL. I call it the original 7 because I think the Philadelphia Flyers are that team that established themselves very clearly as one of the. So you look at a great fan base, you look at a history that had early success, that's been dotted with near success, and finds themselves here now. I don't think it has to be scorched earth. I really don't. And I think maybe in Arizona it can fly, and for the reasons I just said, Edmonton's got a long, strong hockey history too. It hasn't worked there. Yeah. And they've been sold out in Edmonton for years. Philadelphia Flyers fans, Philadelphia sports fans, they're not tolerating mediocrity.
No. And Edmonton may have the best, most skilled player to ever put skates on his feet. And it still hasn't gotten them to any sort of promised land. That's the scariest part about it for me, Craig. I mean, you have Draisaitl and McDavid, and it hasn't resulted in team success. If that doesn't tell you this is a team sport more than anything in the world, I don't know what does.
I totally agree with you, right? And so I mean, we started talking about this as roster building and fitting in the different pieces that are essential to winning, right? I think that it would be different if the Flyers had busted on the 5 previous drafts and they didn't have prospects or they didn't have young players in their lineup, and you go, oh boy, we're old and everything. You might have a different conversation around that. But looking at their roster, I don't see that. I don't see an organization that's in that place. Is it going to take some creativity? Is it going to take some imagination? Is it going to take some boldness? Yeah, I think it does. I think it will. But I think that they have people in place that can affect change in a positive manner.
Yeah. Yeah. My last question for you, Craig. This isn't just Flyers; it's overall. I'd like to pick your brain a little bit on this upcoming draft. You hear it's below average. You hear it's strictly an average draft. There's debate on Shane Wright. I mean, there's always these discussions every year, and next year's draft is highly hyped at this point. I guess one question I have for you is, how much do you think that the shortened seasons, the pandemic, in some cases non-seasons, have taken a bite out of this year's draft class in terms of their development? And secondly, where do you grade the drop-off points as to what the top, how many guys are top end, how many are middle, then where does it become like any other draft?
I think, Bill, what happens a lot of times, and you and me have talked about this at various points, it gets defined at the upper end of the draft. So if there's a McDavid in it, it's a great draft, right?
Yep.
We just went through the 2017 draft. Nico Hischier went 1, Nolan Patrick went 2. Was anybody talking about Cale Makar? Was anybody talking about Miro Heiskanen? They weren't. Claude Giroud, you said, went 22. Okay, I just forgot where he went, right? Like, was anybody talking about, oh, geez, it's a bad draft. I can't believe we have to draft Claude Giroud, right? There's good players that come out of every part of the draft. And it's going to be no different in this draft. One of the things that I've expressed more in recent days, months, last year, if you get a regular NHL player out of the first round, you are doing really, really well. I think there's an over-evaluation of what players are. You think but there's very few stars in any draft, and there's even fewer superstars. So, if we're going to define a draft by if there's a superstar, you're going to be disappointed in most drafts. And if you're going to be defining a first round by, there wasn't that many stars, that's every first round. And developing, putting players, understanding what you're getting, you're drafting 17 and 18-year-olds, it takes time. And you got to be really patient with that process and allowing them to develop. You don't take Major League Baseball players straight out of high school or players drafted in the Major League draft and put them in the majors. Aaron Judge was like a 30th round draft pick at 18 to the Oakland Athletics, but they saw some ability. He went back into the draft. He became a late first round draft pick to the New York Yankees. Now he's one of the great power hitters in Major League Baseball. So I use him as an example, and I think it's who knew that Aaron Judge was going to be a star.
The kids.
Nobody did, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with this draft. And to your point, Bill, the pandemic, the pause, cancellation, postponements have affected materially these young players. Yeah. Materially. I'll just give you a name of a player. Jagger Fergus. He plays in Moose Jaw. He's a really good young player. I had nothing on him. I had nothing on him going into this year. Nothing. Because I didn't see him play. I didn't see him play at U17 tournaments. I didn't see him at playing as an underage in the Western Hockey League. He just didn't have an opportunity, and they were in a bubble. Now he comes in, he's got like almost 30 goals. He's a really good goal scorer. People go, well, why didn't you have him on your list? I didn't know him. I didn't. Like, what am I going to do? Put somebody on the list that I don't know, right? I didn't. But now you're watching it, and I'm not the only one trying to catch up with him. The NHL scouts are trying to catch up with him, right? And this is prevalent throughout the course of scouting. The Ontario Hockey League, all those players that would have been underages last year that you start to get a book on, they didn't play. You didn't have a book. So now you're picking it up, and now you're trying to put all this development projection over evaluation and observation over a very short period of time. You don't have the benefit of time to evaluate where they're at and say, geez, I've watched them come from this point to this point to this point. It's really short. So it's a real challenge for the NHL scouts. And, even after last year's draft, guys, I was told by a number of NHL personnel that they missed players in the 03 group. Then they said, so we're not only trying to catch up to the 04s for the 2022 draft, we're going to be catching up with some 03s, that we just didn't have an opportunity to get to see and evaluate. And so the work is pretty enormous for the NHL scouts and the personnel trying to assess these players, Bill. And the pandemic has had a big impact on it.
And not to mention, such important developmental years for players at that age. I mean, it's so enormous to miss time. Craig, this was so awesome, man. I thank you so much for doing this. You're a guy I love talking to you. You got the executive experience. You're a great broadcaster, director of scouting, all those things. This was a thrill, man. I know our audience is going to absolutely love it. I appreciate it so much. I want you to stay well, stay sane, and as we get up to the trade deadline, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks,
Jason. Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Jason and Bill. One of the things too is you both do great work. You're passionate. You're knowledgeable, and you're fun, right? And so, Jason, when you reached out to me, it's an automatic yes, and that was today, and that will be any time in the future. That speaks to both of you and the quality of people and what you do. I love it. So thank you for reaching out to me and having me on your show.
All right. Thanks, Craig, so much. Appreciate the kind words. Thank you. There he is, Craig Button from TSN, Director of Scouting, joining us on Stick to Hockey Live. He is awesome, isn't he?
He is. I love picking Craig's brain just to see. There's so many areas he can touch on, with a great deal of knowledge and experience. So I love talking with him.
Yeah, absolutely. The director of scouting part of it is huge as well. Bill, thanks for jumping in, man. I really appreciate it because I wasn't sure if Craig was going to join us or not, and he was great enough to join us. But getting to tag team him, I think, was awesome as well. I think the audience is going to love that.
Yeah, had a great time. Thank you, Jason.
All right, there he is, Bill Meltzer on Stick to Hockey Live. Hey, the Parx Sportsbook app is something you need to get because every Thursday on Stick to Hockey Live, we do a little segment. We tell you where to put your money. Now, if you do not have an account, you just download the app, you open up an account, you deposit, and this man, Tones Takes, will tell you where to put that risk-free $500 bet. So let's get to this week's edition of Tones Takes. And And there he is, my fellow bald-headed brother.
What's up, Jason? How you doing?
Doing
How
good,
are you?
man. I'm like floating, man, from talking to Craig. Like he's got like just awesome energy.
He's awesome. Yep.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And I thank him so much for joining us. Let's get to the business because I'm telling people, hey, use that $500 risk-free bet on the Parx Sportsbook app, and get in on the action. Tone's got some plays for you. So you're on fire with the props this season. You're almost plus 28 units in the props. You're plus 30 with your overall NHL record. Let's start with a team total tonight. You like the Beantown boys, little Bruin action.
Yeah, Boston team total over 3.5 plus 105. Marchand's coming back tonight, give them a little boost. They scored 5 goals the other day against Colorado. Seattle has just given up a ton of goals this year, and that can be attributed to their goaltending. Both their goalies are under 90% save percentage. They actually haven't. They've been pretty decent defensively, but their goaltending has been atrocious, which is kind of surprising with Grubauer, who was Vezina finalist last year. They're giving up 3.82 goals per game at home. I faded them twice this week with the Islanders and then with the Canucks. I'm gonna go to it again. Fade the Kraken, not release the Kraken. That's my motto.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like Grubauer's going, shit. I should have stayed in Colorado. Like, what am I doing? Right?
Exactly.
I took the cash,
Exactly.
but Grubauer too. I thought that team, of anything, would be okay defensively because that seemed to be the direction they were going in this expansion draft. But they have been they just can't keep the puck out of the net. You can't keep the puck out of the net, good. Let's get to a player prop here. A great place to put that $500 risk-free bet.
You got me, Jason? What happened here?
Well, we lost Tone. I think that was because of me, though. So we'll get Tone back on here. We're just talking about getting a player prop. There he is. He's back with us. A player prop on Matthew Barzell.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Barzell over 2.5 shots on goal plus 120. When I do these props, I take a very tactical approach to them, especially now in the season. There's so much data available.
Yeah.
I look at team tendencies against positions. The Sharks give up 9.76 shots per game at home to centers, 10.5 in the last 10. And Barzell on the road has hit this in 62% of his games, including 5 of his last 6, totaling 19 shots. So he definitely shoots more on the road, and at plus money, I like this price. I think the Islanders are going to keep pressing the pace here. They kind of have to get back into it. So, and he plays on the top power play line. I look at that also.
Yeah.
He's centering the top power play line. He's going to get those power play minutes, so that goes into a lot of it also.
Yeah, and he's a trigger on that power play because you got big guys that'll get in front, create traffic. He gets the shot, rebound is the goal, but he still gets credit for the shot.
Right. Exactly.
It's a great point too that you make. At this point, you're 50 games in with most teams, and when you see that the Sharks give up 9.76 shots per game on goal to centers, that's a nice spot. That's perfect. That's a great play and great data there that you're leaning on for it as well. Let's go to the other side, and let's go to a defenseman with a player prop here in Roman Josi.
Yeah, Josi over 3.5 shots plus 130. Love the value on it. He has 174 shots this season on 331 attempts. It's about a 52% shot rate, 3.5 average per game. And you look at Dallas, you figured maybe they may not give up a lot of shots. They may be a little defensively. They kind of are at home, but on the road, it's a different story. They give up 10.58 shots per game to defensemen on the road, which is the second highest in the NHL. At home, that number goes down to 8.96. So this is what I'm talking about with like home road splits and tendencies and stuff. And for a guy like Josi, who he's leading shot getter on that team, at the 3.5 I'm not crazy about, but I'm fine with it at plus 130. I don't want to lay juice on it, but plus 130, sign me up all day long.
Yeah, it gives you a little value there as well.
Yeah.
I was told by a little birdie that even though
what's going on here?
Can I just get a good internet around here? I'm on an Ethernet too. It's such shit sometimes. I was saying that I was told by a little birdie that even though you were at a Flyers game, you had action on the Avalanche in another game, and you were watching more of that than the game you were at.
Yeah, it was a game, and I think it was like the early 2000s. Me and my buddy went down, buddy Dave. I don't even know who the Flyers were playing. It was a Sunday night. We were watching football all day.
Didn't matter.
Didn't matter, no. So third period comes along. I think we bet the Colorado Avalanche. They were playing Minnesota. So Minnesota's up like 2-0, like in the third period. So we're both looking at the scoreboard. We're sitting on first level. Those pretty good seats. Like there was first level in the corner, maybe like 25 rows up, 20 rows up. So they're pretty decent seats. And we're just looking at the scoreboard the entire time. And we're saying, all right, that 0 is going to turn into a 1. It did. And we're like, all right, that 1's going to turn into a 2. It did. And we're like, all right, that 2 is going to turn into a 3, and Colorado's going to win this game. And it did.
This is like before you could actually just like watch the game on your cell phone, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like early 2000s. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. That's great. You're just sitting there. People sit next to you going, what are they looking at up there?
Yeah, exactly.
Click. Oh, you're high-fiving and shit. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Tone, where can people see your stuff?
At Tones Takes on Twitter. Post hockey plays all day and all night long. I'll have more tonight once I get another look at the cards. So I appreciate the shout out, Jason, and having me on every week. And I appreciate everyone following.
All right, everybody. Make sure you get in on Tones Takes. Thanks for doing this, man.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
There he is. Tones Takes, another edition here on Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live. I love the fact that Tone rolled out for the prop, the Barzell prop, that the Sharks give up 9.76 shots on goal per game to centers at home. And therefore, that's part that goes into the equation of taking Matthew Barzell at plus 2.5 shots on goal for the game at plus 120. That's second level data and knowledge right there. I absolutely love to see. That's how you put your money in smart places. And that's what you need to do on the Parx Sportsbook app. So download it. Do yourself a favor. Download the app and get in on the action. Real easy to navigate. You'll have a great time doing it. And just open an account, deposit your money. As I was saying, this is the place to put your action. I'm going to have to reboot my modem, I think, with the Parx Sportsbook app. So again, download, deposit, get the first bet risk-free, and check it out. You'll bet on player performances like a Barzell over 2.5 shots on goal, plus 120, or over 3.5 shots on goal for Roman Josi at plus 130. You can bet on the games. You can get in all different ways to bet. First to score, exact score, last to score, period totals, you name it. It's all there for you on the Parx Sportsbook app. And make sure you follow them on their social channels at Parx Sportsbook on Twitter. Follow them on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook as well. Get great content, daily specials, and tons more. And of course, they present this fine podcast. We'll have the Aji's podcast with Harry Mays tomorrow, slightly delayed this week with Harry traveling, but we'll have that for you coming up on a Friday and lead you into the weekend. But everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks to Craig Button for joining us from TSN. Thanks to Bill Meltzer for joining us. And thanks to Tones Takes, and thanks to you, everybody, for listening, watching. Leave us a rating and review. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll talk to you on a brand new Parx Sportsbook presents Stick to Hockey Live coming up on Monday. So have a great weekend, everybody.